If you're happy with the same old ways of dating,
If you enjoy sucking at communication,
and you have no desire to improve your romantic life, then our podcast might not be for you.
but if you want some out-of-the-box ideas to deepen your current relationships,
broaden your sexual horizons,
develop a better understanding of yourself,
or learn more about non-monogamy,
Then you've come to the right place. I'm Jase,
I'm Emily.
and I'm Dedeker.
and this is the Multiamory podcast.
Songs I know I did, forcing me to form myself to fit.
On this episode of the Multiamory podcast, we have a very special guest, author Dedeker Winston, whose first book, The Smart Girl's Guide to Polyamory, Everything You Need to Know About Open Relationships, Non-Monogamy, and Alternative Love,
Comes out today.
comes out today. Go buy it on Amazon. You can find it in Barnes & Noble. Where else can they find it?
I think you can order from Target, too.
Okay,
What?
sweet.
Yeah.
Go ask your local mom and pop bookshop and support local
And they'll
businesses.
pre-order it?
Yes.
To order it,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. This is the book right here. Emily
Here it
and
is,
I.
too.
Emily and I are some of the very lucky people who were shipped our pre-order copies early by Amazon.
Thank you, Amazon.
I know there's some other of you out there. So for those of you who this might be your first episode of ours that you're listening to, Dedeker is one of the hosts of this show.
Normally, I'm not on this side of being interviewed.
Yes, but this is a very special interview for her about her book that's
Yes.
just come out and that Emily and I have both just finished reading yesterday, right?
Well,
This morning? Did you finish this morning?
But the nice thing about this interview is that Dedeker, we have compiled a list of questions that Dedeker knows nothing about. Usually
Yes.
she is privy to the questions that we are going to ask an interviewee, but
Right.
at this point, that is not going to happen.
That's why I'm drinking a martini,
No,
for those of
exactly.
you who aren't watching the video. Because I'm
Jase
really
and I
nervous.
are one martini in as well, however.
Yes.
I'm really nervous
Yeah.
about the questions you guys are going to ask me, and I'm not entirely sure why. I think it's because...
You shouldn't be. No, we love your book.
Right.
So-
Well, I'm ready.
So to start out, could you introduce yourself
Yes.
rather than me trying to, come up with your list of achievements?
Mm-hmm.
Could you give us a quick introduction about who you are and why they should check out your book?
Goodness. My name is Dedeker Winston, for those of you who haven't listened to this podcast before. I work as a relationship coach who specializes in doing one-on-one coaching, counseling sessions for people who are transitioning into non-monogamy or who are, needing a little bit of guidance with non-monogamy. And I wrote a book. Sorry, I'm going to be a bad guest.
No, you'll be a
You
great
guys are going to
guest.
regret the day that you asked Dedeker Winston to
Never.
come on your podcast.
Never.
Anyway, yeah, so this is my first book, The Smart Girl's Guide to Polyamory, and what a thrill ride it has been. It's been about 2 years from inception to fruition.
Wow.
And yeah, it has been like, I don't know, like raising a child, maybe, or like having a baby. Like, I don't know, I've never done anything like this in my life before.
Well, it's clear from reading it that a lot of research went into it as well, that it's not
Yes.
just kind of a person's ramblings or their thoughts about this.
No.
It's a very well researched and well put together book. Did you want to jump to a question real quick?
So I have a quote to read after this question, which I loved, but I wanted to ask you, why write a book on polyamory, and why specifically for women? Because clearly you felt the need to do that with the lovely title, and we just wanted to know exactly why that was.
Okay, well, with the women thing specifically, initially when I started writing kind of the rough outline of this book, it was just going to be a book on polyamory. And I knew that, obviously there have already been books written on polyamory, and I'm going to have to find some kind of unique voice or unique angle to bring to this, but I wasn't sure what yet. And then I forget why this happened, but one day, I was in the bookstore and I picked up an issue of Cosmo, and I started flipping through it and was just physically nauseated by the dating advice that was in Cosmo. And I started looking at a couple other women's magazines and was just seriously just so put off by the advice that was being given to young women about their relationships, really disempowering, things about like how long you should ignore his text message before getting back to him, if
Right.
the like right manipulative things you have to say and do in order to get him to settle down, like just this stuff that's like kind of putting women in these positions of not actually having a lot of power or a lot of agency. And so it was kind of combined with that I knew that I wanted to write a book about polyamory, but also something that treated women as their own free agents rather than just kind of operating in this really powerless world. And so, so that's one part of it. The other part of it is that, both systems of empowerment and of disempowerment, specifically for women, are perpetuated through women as well, to give a controversial example, a woman who wears a burqa, like there wasn't a man who put a gun to her head and told her she had to wear a burqa. Like she's wearing a burqa because her mother told her, like, this is what you do. And her aunts told her this is what you do. And we see that with slut shaming as well. That like it's not just men who slut shame women, it's women who slut shame other women as well. And so I thought about that from the same way of like, well, if I want to promote a good idea, like agency, like independence, like relationship choice, I think that it does lie with women as well. If women make this more normal and more acceptable, then I think the rest of the world can follow. Yeah. So.
Nice.
I wanted to read a quick quote from your book. That is specifically on polyamory and potentially like an answer to this question. But you said people in alternative relationships don't yet have the benefit of a culture chock full of role models, media, books, and movies demonstrating how healthy non-monogamous relationships should go. There are a lot of people with a lot of questions and not enough established answers. And I liked the fact that this is a book kind of at least, beginning to give those answers in a very eloquent and very well, produced and thought out way.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, something that we've talked about on this podcast before is the fact that, having a support network around you when there are issues in your relationship, in your non-monogamous relationship, is a very precious thing because you don't necessarily have the same outlets that like monogamous folk have. You can't, just talk to your coworker over lunch about it, or maybe you can't go to your sibling or your parent necessarily. That being able to provide more role models, more professionals, more answers in general, I think makes this a lot more accessible to more people.
For sure. If I can change topics a little bit, so the book as a whole is kind of an overview of polyamory and open relationships and kind of that whole spectrum of everything that goes into it, much like the book The Ethical Slut, or possibly More Than Two, that they're kind of in that guidebook sort of format of like, here's some things to think about, here's all the stuff you need to know. What I like about this is that it is a much more modern take on those while still being accessible, while still being sort of fun, light, humorous, easy to read, that it's not like this technical manual of all this stuff you need to know. It's
like
more
Sex at Dawn kind of is.
Right, that it's not,
which we love, by the way.
Right, that it's not this kind of dry presentation of research or even More Than Two, which is super thorough, but gets really, it can get really hard to get through it all because there's so much that this kind of strikes that balance between being, covering a lot of stuff but still being approachable, which I think it's a great book for people who are new to polyamory.
Yes.
But one thing I want to talk about that I especially like about this book is that it includes a chapter on the unwritten history of polyamory, which is something that, I was with you when you were working on that chapter, and it's something that at the time it was fascinating to hear about, and then also reading it, and I've read a few different versions of it as it's been written, but I keep coming back to how much I love this chapter because it's something that it's presenting actual historical information and research in a way, kind of, it almost felt out of place for me at first with the rest of the book, which is kind of more about how to do relationships, and this is this sort of like, why do I need to go through this whole history? But I really loved how just kind of how fun it was to read and to go, oh my gosh, I had no idea that these people were polyamorous, or that this community was that, or that my silverware is polyamorous, right? Like that I didn't know those things. And my question for you was, in writing that, like, was there a place in researching this unwritten history of polyamory that for you was the most kind of surprising, the most like holy crap moment in your writing that section?
And I guess, and I also have a follow-up, like, what was your research process for this book?
Well, first of all, to address your comment earlier, I thought for sure this was going to be the first chapter to get cut. Because it is kind of like, this is generally like a guidebook, and like there's suddenly this big old like history nerd chapter.
Right.
And so I'm really glad that it didn't, because it was one of my favorite ones to write, actually. So as far as the most interesting, my God, I mean, I still feel like there were so many gaps in it that I didn't hit as far as history. I particularly loved learning about, there were a couple ones that I really liked researching, which was the Native American practices.
Yeah, I found that fascinating.
I wish I could have written more about that, because a lot of the Native American tribes practice some form of non-monogamy.
Wow.
And actually, it goes in line with a lot of the observations they made in Sex at Dawn, that historically, researchers will observe like primitive tribes and see something strange in their relationships, but still find some way to make it look like monogamous marriage.
Fascinating.
Right.
And I think that with Native American history, that's happened many times, without researchers actually seeing, oh no, what's actually going on here is someone sharing a husband, or no, what's actually going on here is two bros swapping wives.
Right.
And so that was really, really interesting to me, and I was sad that I couldn't include more on that. And then the other one was the Bloomsbury group.
Right.
Was the group of
favorites.
Intellectuals and writers in England in the mid 1800s who were all kind of like cohabiting and in this little like polycule together. And I don't know. I think that things like that are so surprising and exciting to me, because it's people who are very smart and very influential. Doing something, like they were in their creative lives doing something out, against the grain and outside the lines, and also in their personal lives. That's really interesting to me. And the research process was just like pouring through so many academic archives for hours and hours and hours and hours. Wow. And like at the end of a day of researching and writing, I would come to Jase and I'd be like, Jase, like my brain can't contain all this information. Can I like talk to you about everything I learned today?
Oh, wow. How cool.
And that would include things that didn't end up in the book, but I was just like, I just got to tell somebody about this crazy thing that happens in sub-Saharan Africa. Like, isn't this crazy?
Oh my God, that's so cool.
Yeah, that I'd have to like dump all this information onto Jase. Like, I think that, if I could have written an entire book on
I'm sure.
Just the history.
Maybe that'll be another book
possibly,
at some point.
Yeah.
How cool. So let's see. I wanted to ask about the homework for each section, because the book is broken up into obviously many chapters, many parts, and you have this really awesome homework at the end of each section.
You think it is?
Well, no, it's great, because it's amazing. I mean, it's not just like journal about something for 20 minutes or whatever. It's really like speaking about and like thinking very specifically about things in your life or moments or like past relationships that have happened, and talking about things with people, with your current partners or your parents or siblings. And I just wanted to ask, like, how did you come up with all of the homework?
Some of it were exercises that I had developed with my clients.
Nice.
Actually, most of them were things that I developed with my clients to like really uncover, what are these underlying beliefs or underlying assumptions about various things. There was this, so Franklin Vo, I talked to Franklin Vo on Twitter a couple of times during the book writing process, usually in freak out moments of like, I don't know what I'm doing, or like, what did you do about this? Or like, how do I handle this? And he was a total trooper, was like very encouraging and would answer all my questions. And at one point he said this great phrase. He said that, we don't read books as they are. We read books as we are.
Wow. That's amazing.
Which totally makes sense that, if you read a book at different stages in your life, you get very different things out of it. And you can interpret it in very different ways. And so I think that I really wanted to build in some way of getting people to like kind of check in with themselves and get a sense of like, what is it that I'm getting out of this? Like, what is it that's coming up for me? Because I think that is very true, especially in a book like this, that can be challenging to what your beliefs already are, what your practices already are. To have the opportunity to check in and just see like, okay, what is this state of me? What is going on here? And I would hope that, if you did read the book 5 years later, your responses in the
get
homework
something
would
out
be
of it.
very different.
Yeah, for
Mm-hmm.
sure. So before we continue, we wanted to take a quick break for ads.
For ads. We're going to talk about some ways that you can support our show if you're liking what you're hearing here, if you want to help us to keep doing this and keep doing more things, such as our West Coast tour, which is happening this week.
Holy God.
I know. Dedeker's book comes out today, and our first show is going to be in Oakland this Friday on February 10th. We're also going to be in Portland on February 13th, Seattle on February 14th, back in Los Angeles on February 21st, and then in San Diego in early March. We're still pinning down that date right now. If you want to check out more about that, you can go to multiamory.com/events. There are still tickets for sale for all of those venues. Not very many left in some of the venues. So go get your tickets today. We're really excited to see you there and then to come hang out with us afterward for a drink in each of those cities. We'd love to connect with the community there. And then also, if you want to be an active member of our community, you can also become a patron of ours on patreon.com, patreon.com/multiamory. And there you can support our show on a monthly basis. Think like PBS or something like that, right? You could sign up to pay.
We don't send you a tote bag though.
Right, we don't have a tote bag, but
Eventually.
For people at different reward tiers, we have a private members-only Facebook group that a lot of people get great advice and discussion and support out of.
And give, yeah.
Right, and some have gotten to be part of, I recently had some patrons who helped me with the blog post that I worked on, but being able to actually interact with this community. And then also at a higher tier, we have our monthly video discussion group, which we just had this last weekend, which is always amazing. We love connecting with you and getting to hear what's going on in your lives. And it helps us support our show and do things like this tour. Next, if you guys want, Valentine's Day is coming up.
Oh, it is.
It's a week away.
It's so soon.
It's a week away. This is your last week to get the special Valentine's Day deal at adamandeve.com. If you use our promo code MULTI, up until the 14th, up until Valentine's Day, you will get the Lovers Package, which means you get 50% off of almost any item in the store. Plus, you'll get something fun for him.
A sexy surprise for her.
Something that both of you can use.
As well as adult
DVDs,
films on DVD
yes.
and free shipping on the entire order. Plus, a portion of your order will go to support our show.
So, MULTI.
At adamandeve.com.
And now, back to you, Dedeker. Actually, back to us.
Back to
Yeah,
We're
back to
going
us asking questions.
say a question.
Yes.
So, Jase, say a question.
So one of the parts something that I underlined in my copy, which now has all sorts of marks and things all over it,
Yeah.
is in the section where you're talking about some of the things that people will do to try to prevent themselves from getting hurt or to preempt problems or to try to solve jealousy that don't actually work, that actually can do a lot more harm than good. I thought that was a really interesting section to include, kind of as a comprehensive thing. And one of those that we've talked about in the past on this show as well is the concept of veto, of being able to have veto privilege to say, your partner's dating someone and you can just say, I don't like that person, you have to break up with them because I'm your primary partner. I'm going to tell you have to do that and you have to do it no matter what because that's the rule we set. That's what we agreed on. And it's something that's, people argue about this a lot. I think that we tend to come down pretty hard on the side that doing that ultimately will actually hurt not only that relationship which has been vetoed, obviously, but will actually hurt your own relationship much more than anything it saves it from. And what I really liked in the book was this analogy that you made about imagining if you had a veto rule with your mother.
Yeah.
And I thought this was
No, hang on. Did you like it?
fascinating.
Because when I first pitched it to you, you didn't like it so much.
I don't-
Oh, snaps.
Fascinating.
I don't think that I quite understood where you were going with it at first.
I see.
Because what it is it's about
I liked it.
Okay, good.
saying, you have this connection with your mother, and so you make this agreement that she can veto anyone that you date if that person seems to her to be coming between your relationship with her. Now, if anyone has had a mom and dated or been a mom with a child who's dating, I feel like it always feels like anyone they date is taking them away from you. So it's a very easy thing to imagine that mom going, nope, you're attached to this person. That's threatening to me. I'm going to veto it. And then if you imagine your mother doing that, and you actually enforcing it, how's that going to affect that relationship between you and your mother? If she's the one who took away something that you cared about purely because she wasn't totally comfortable with a relationship that wasn't even hers. I thought that was a really interesting, I liked the way that came together in the final book.
Yeah, I mean, obviously their relationship with your parents is a very different relationship than any relationship you would have with a romantic partner. However, that example came up because I was thinking about, like, for some reason, a lot of people feel like veto power just is this very natural thing. Like, well, naturally, I'm going to give all this decisive power to my romantic partner. But that's not a power that we give, like, to our friends.
No.
We don't let our friends veto whatever new friends we might have.
Right.
With our parents, it's interesting because that is one of the situations where I think we see throughout history these examples of stories, both fictional and non-fictional, of parents vetoing romantic relationships.
Right.
And that never ends well. Even just the classic fairy tale of the king who tells his daughter, no, you can't marry this peasant. Romeo and Juliet of, no, you can't marry a Montague or whatever. Like, that doesn't end well. And so, of course, we see those examples and we're like, yeah, sure, true love prevails. But for some reason, we look at giving veto to a romantic partner, and some people kind of think like, oh no, that makes sense. Like, that makes us feel good. That makes us feel safe. So that's where that example came from. I do get, the parent relationship is very different, but I think that that's something that speaks to people about, and they can see more clearly about how they would feel if a parent stepped in to dictate what their relationships would be like.
Yeah.
I thought also something that I liked about the analogy that you actually didn't get to in the book, and maybe you could add this in the second edition or something, I don't know, is just the idea, though, that in that analogy of giving them veto power to just unilaterally decide that your relationship needs to end is not a healthy thing, and we see how bad this ends in those stories. But at the same time, if you're dating someone that your parent is like, hey, like, I'm really not happy with how this person treats you, or something like that, it's not going to be an instant like, oh, well, you said that, I have to do it.
Yeah.
But you do take that into account, or you don't, but you're consciously being like, okay, I understand that I'm going to do that. And I think sometimes when people want that in their relationship, there's kind of this assumption that your partner is just going to entirely ignore you as if you haven't known them as long as you have. And if they don't value your opinion, if you're like, hey, like, I'm actually really concerned about this person that you're seeing, because that's always the counterexample.
Yeah.
It's like, what about when there's abuse? What about when there's some really bad situation? It's like, well, are you assuming that your partner just doesn't
get it?
Doesn't take you seriously at all, or like doesn't listen to you? Because then maybe you have a bigger problem on your hands.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think the analogy of a parent also kind of works with that as well.
That's true.
Anyway, did you have
Yes.
the next one?
Yes. So, okay. Jase and I are in this book somewhat. And
is this the crying section?
No, that'll be later.
Okay, cool.
No, but like, we obviously lived through many of the things that you spoke about in this book, and it was intense to read. I can't even imagine how intense it was to write.
Yeah.
But what gave you the strength to kind of go back and trudge through all of that again, and then write it down for the whole world to see?
Putting it off to the last minute.
Okay. That makes sense.
To be totally honest. Yeah, some of the more intense sections literally were stuff that like I put off to the last minute. Because I didn't want to go back there. I'd been spending all this time trying to heal from a lot of this and trying to not obsess over this. And so then to be like, well, I got to relive this and think about the details and think about what needs to be included and what doesn't. Like, no, I really didn't want to go there. And so a lot of those sections were, last minute.
Yeah.
But
it was a particularly vulnerable time in like all of our lives.
Yeah, definitely. But, the very specific thing, because honestly, there were some things in some particular stories that it got to the point of me being like, maybe I just shouldn't include these. Maybe I don't need to write about this. Maybe I don't need to write about this at all,
Wow.
And maybe I should just leave it. Maybe this is too much about me. It was me really trying to not go to these spaces. And there's this writer, Anne Lamott, and she wrote this book called Bird by Bird, and it's a book on the writing process.
Yeah.
She teaches writing and has written many books, and so it's all just kind of about the philosophy surrounding the writing process.
Right.
And so I was reading that concurrently while writing, and it was so helpful to me. But there was one line in the book that really got me, and gosh, what's the specific quote? It's something along the lines of that, you know, if you've gone through some kind of hardship, if you've escaped from out underneath somebody else's thumb, you know, write down the truth of that and take the risk of setting somebody else free.
Wow.
No, and when I read that, I was just like, oh, you know,
Yeah.
God damn it, Anne Lamott, you called me out. And no, when I read that was the moment when I was like, no, like I need to share this, you know, I need to think about, you know, what if there is someone else who is in a situation very similar to what I went through, that needs to read this right now, that needs to know how this went down, you know? And so, I mean, it sounds super noble. But that was the motivating thing, was like taking the risk to set somebody else free, you know, even though it's very vulnerable and very uncomfortable, but maybe it'll manifest in some good for somebody else.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I was going to say that in reading the book, I mean, I've said before that I think that Franklin Veau's The Game Changer is one of the most important books that poly people could read, and it's not an instructional manual. It is just a personal story. It's just his memoir of his time of being polyamory and changing his opinions about hierarchy and all of those things and veto rules and all of that. And I found that in this book too, that in chapters like 7 through 10 or whatever, where you kind of have more of those personal stories, as much as for me they were painful to read, some of them, but I found myself being like, this personal story is so much more compelling to me to explain the things that you spent the previous 5 chapters explaining. That to me it was like just hearing a personal story of how things can really go down and how you can get to a place with the best of intentions and end up causing a lot of hurt and not saving that relationship. And to me, that was huge. And I hope that people find that same thing with that section, because I did find that to be like, wow, like this is a story that not a lot of people share. They preach about like, you should do it this way or you should do it this other way, but actually just sharing a very personal, very true story of how that happened for you, I think is actually a very powerful thing.
Yeah, I mean, we're all learning, and it's very clear. I mean, we get on this podcast and we do this every week and talk about the great things that we've learned and stuff, but it was lovely to like have that in there and really talk about, hey, I've gone through so much in order to get to this point. And obviously we know firsthand what that was. And I did want to ask, how has writing this book changed your polyamorous life? I know that's a loaded and big question,
Well, I've yet to test this, but I imagine that it's going to make going on first dates much more interesting now.
Guess what? I wrote a book.
Just be like,
here
I
it
wrote
is.
a book. If you want to be in a relationship with me, maybe you should read my book.
Yeah, wow.
It's kind of like, instead of us having 10 conversations over the next couple of
Why don't
dates,
you
maybe
just
just
read
read
this
the
whole
book,
book?
and then on the second date, we can talk about it.
That's great.
I haven't tested that out yet. As far as how it's affected me now, good golly.
Miss Molly.
I think it really has made my communication better, and I think it really did make me confront a lot of things inside myself, because I mean, like, I'd be writing about stuff during the day, and then if I got into an argument at night with one of my partners, it's like, ugh, like I was just writing about how to not do this earlier in the day. And so I think that's definitely a big factor of like, well, it's kind of like I've compiled all the knowledge that I had, at least at that particular moment. And there's something very affirming about that, of like, okay, like I know this to be true for me, and so this is something that I can continue to live by, and that I should continue to live by. It's really difficult, I found, with writing a book, because it is just like a snapshot, you know. Even in the number of months since submitting the manuscript, I've learned so many things where I'm like, oh, like I wish I could have put this in the book. And like, oh, this would be another good thing to put in the book.
Number 2,
Which is actually why it's so great to have this podcast, because it is a medium where we can take new things, or if I find a new idea or a new thought, that we can discuss it and put it out there. Instead of me just continually revising this book for years to come, which will probably happen anyway. I did want to talk quickly about each of our personal experiences with reading this book. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to?
I'll
okay, Jase, go first.
Yeah, like I said, there were some pretty emotional parts for me personally, being mentioned in the book, and thinking back to those stories and those days. But also, I do think it just kind of hit on a lot of these fairly universal experiences of thinking that you've got something figured out and realizing that you don't. I know that for me, going from being engaged and thinking that I had it figured out, and that right,
it's still weird
and
that
then,
that happened once upon a time with you.
Right, this was like 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
But my devastation after that was partly the sadness of losing that relationship, but also partly this shame at having been so wrong, that I felt embarrassed about it. And I think that sort of personalness of this book, of that it's come through learning from mistakes rather than just kind of making some decisions and saying like, oh, I got it figured out, or this has always been easy for me, or I've never been a jealous person, or those things, but saying, no, I've worked through these things and I'm still working on them. Here's what I've learned so far. For me was a really useful, I think that was a really powerful sort of book to write. And it's also a book that I personally am really pleased to have it in existence, to be able to recommend it to other people. Because I think it's been a long time since a real comprehensive guidebook of polyamory has been put out that is really accessible, that is really approachable, but I think is also very modern. It's about what polyamory is now, not what polyamory was 20 years ago or even 10 years ago, but it is very current into what's going on in the culture, especially toward the end of the book when you talk about like what's next for polyamory, what's the future.
So great. And talking about underrepresented groups, I think, is something that so many books out there don't include. And I was so proud that you put that in there.
That was so difficult because of the fact that it's impossible to cover all that's missed in the polyamorous community, and hopefully, there are other authors who pick up that torch, because, we still need someone who talks about a perspective of polyamory and disability, or polyamory and race, or, polyamory in any number of different communities or disadvantages or whatever, that we still do need those voices. And obviously as a white girl, there's only so much that I can do to speak from those voices. But I am hoping that, that this helps to continue to create that space for authors who can speak, from underrepresented groups to kind of come to the forefront with that.
Okay. I'm going to need to pull myself together right now. Sorry. Yeah. Anyone who knows me well knows that I'm just a big fucking sob. Essentially, just reading your book made me want to have all the people in my life be able to rewrite something, because I'm going to quote. I know, I'm sorry.
This is terrible radio.
I'm so sorry.
Everyone's crying.
Yeah, it's just to quote Little Women, which is one of my fucking favorite books ever. Reading your book was like opening a window into your heart, truly, because
How'd you know about the Little Women thing with me too?
Oh God, I love that book so much. Yeah, just the fact that I got to know you through your writing deeper and more vulnerably and more specifically than I think I ever have before. And that was fascinating and important to me specifically and really great. So thank you for that. And I am so proud to know you and to know you as intimately as I do, because getting to be a part of this in this small way that I was is huge in my life and hugely important. So thank you for doing that. I do think it will change the face of polyamory and become a new, book and manual for people out there. And it's really incredible. And so congratulations and well done. And yeah, sorry.
We don't normally do this to our guests.
No, I know.
So we
just
don't
sobbing outright.
Sobbing.
Yeah, anyways.
Okay, well, now that we took a break to wipe off all the tears.
Yeah, we did want to leave you with the classic multiamory question of what is something that you can do right now to create a positive change in your relationship? Obviously, you wrote an entire book on the subject.
Yeah,
however,
what would just be one thing that you would like to tell people who are new to polyamory or who are newish to this? Just one piece.
Oh gosh, it's so hard. I think that I would probably direct people to discover the most effective system for emotional management that works for you. For me, in my polyamorous journey, it's been meditation. Meditation has really helped me get through the difficult times, or really, really enjoy the good times. But that may not be the case for everybody. It could be therapy. It could be some kind of self-care. It could be some kind of, personal development workshop or whatever. But yeah, I think it's kind of like setting up what your own little home base is going to be for yourself that you can retreat to when like things are bad in order to care for yourself. I don't know if that's very clear.
Yeah, no, for me it's writing.
Yeah, like journaling is good too.
Given me more clarity than like anything else. Yeah.
Or even if your emotional management is like your favorite video game for 20 minutes, like the one action that that you can fall back on that will help get you into like a more grounded space, and just having that always. I think that's good for any relationship, really.
Yeah. Nice. Well, thank you so much. Your book comes out today.
Yay.
It's called The Smart Girl's Guide to Polyamory. You can just Google it and find it. But if they don't want to Google it and they just want to go straight there, where can people go to find out where to get your book and more about you?
They can go to smartgirlsguidetopolyamory.com. That will redirect to the special book page on my website. They can go to the Smart Girls Guide to Polyamory Facebook page. Or they can follow me on Twitter at Dedeker Winston, or you can go to the Multiamory website. There's probably all over the place.
We also have links to all of that in our show notes for this episode.
Yeah, for sure.
So you guys can go check it out, get the book. It's awesome, and like
really
Emily
is.
said, I also hope that this does change the face of polyamory and help to make it something that's approachable and normalizes it for a lot of people in the world.
Can I promo my giveaway really quick?
Yeah,
sure.
It's ending today, but I think it's going to end today, like at midnight or something like that.
So you still have a chance.
There's still a chance, yeah. So I'm doing a giveaway right now for one signed copy of my book that someone will get for free. To enter that giveaway, you need to make a donation in any amount to a nonprofit called She Should Run. If you go to sheshouldrun.org. And what She Should Run is it's a nonprofit that's dedicated to providing education and resources and encouragement to women and girls who want to run for office. So their whole thing is about getting more women into politics.
That's great. Yeah.
Because we're 51% of the population, but in the U.S. Congress, only like 20%.
Yeah.
There's only 2 countries in the world that have 50% representation of women. So anyway, so for people who make a donation and just like send a screenshot of their confirmation to Dedeker@multiamory.com, will be entered into the drawing for a giveaway of the Smart Girl's Guide to Polyamory.
Yay.
And also, we'll all be happier because hopefully there'll be more women in office in a couple of years.
And also to tweet about it, right? You want them to spread the word.
If they can,
this.
that'd be nice. But
Great. Spread awareness as well as donating to that organization. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We look forward to hearing from all of you who have read the book as well and getting feedback. You can send that either to Dedeker or you can send it to Multiamory at info@multiamory.com, and Dedeker will also see it that way. All right, thank you all so much. You can see more of our stuff at multiamory.com. You can follow us on Twitter at Multiamory. Find us on Facebook, on Reddit. We're all over the place. Instagram. We've got some fun Instagram stuff going on lately. Anyway, we'd love to hear from you. Get involved in the community, whether it's through Patreon or just through Twitter or Facebook or anything like that. We love interacting with you, and we hope to see you on tour.
Yay.
All right.
Woo!
Bye.
Hey, this is Dan Savage from the Savage Lovecast and Savage Love, and you're listening to a Swing Set podcast at Swing Set FM.